What if your biggest dream and your scariest moment happened at the same time, in front of millions? One minute, you're standing in a quiet classroom. The next, you're facing a sea of cameras, judges, and strangers, ready to decide your future with the push of a buzzer. This is the story of Tom, a humble schoolteacher whose voice didn't just echo through a theater, it shook the world. From a quiet life in West Sussex to standing ovations on global stages, Tom's journey is one of resilience, risk, and raw talent. Before we uncover how his world changed forever, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon because you won't want to miss a single note of this incredible story. The stage was massive, the lights blinding, and the pressure unthinkable. Yet Tom Ball stood calmly at the center of it all, hands clasped, eyes scanning the crowd with a quiet, nervous energy. A 23-year-old secondary school teacher from West Sussex, Tom wasn't dressed like a star. He wasn't boastful or flashy. He was polite, humble, and just a little awkward. Exactly the kind of person the audience didn't expect to blow the roof off. "What's your name?" Tom Ball answered. There was a slight laugh when he mentioned being compared to Michael Ball. Simon Cowell smirked. The audience smiled politely, already placing him in the nice try category. But Tom wasn't there for polite smile. He was there to sing, and then it began. "I've spent a lifetime running." The first note slid through the air like a blade, crisp, pure, and filled with something deeper than just sound. It was emotion. It was truth. It was vulnerability, wrapped in control. Gasps echoed through the theater. Faces changed. Amanda Holden's eyes widened. A murmur rippled through the crowd as disbelief turned into stunned silence. By the chorus, people were rising to their feet. It wasn't just a good audition. It was a moment, the kind you remember long after the show ends. When the final note soared and then fell into silence, the entire room erupted. A standing ovation. Every judge on their Amanda, barely able to contain her awe, called it one of the best performances we've seen in 16 years. Alesha Dixon, visibly moved, praised the emotion behind his voice. And Simon, usually the wall of stone, broke into a rare smile. "There's something so likable about it," he said, not just commenting on the voice, but the heart behind it. Tom didn't just sing, he made people feel something real. In those few minutes, the narrative flipped. The teacher became the lesson. The man they underestimated had just delivered one of the most unforgettable auditions in the show's history. This wasn't just the first time the world saw Tom Ball. It was the first time the world heard him. Long before the bright lights and roaring applause, Tom Ball lived a quiet, steady life that looked nothing like the path of a rising star. By day, he was Mr. Ball, the kind, approachable secondary school teacher at a school in Burgess Hill. He taught teenagers who knew him for his lesson, his warmth, and maybe his quirky sense of humor, but almost none of them knew what he was carrying quietly inside. He hadn't told them about the audition. He hadn't told them he could sing. For most, Tom's life looked ordinary, but behind the classroom doors and lesson plans was a young man with a lifelong love for music that had never left his soul. It started early, riding home from school in the back seat of his mom's car, belting out Les Miserables like it was their private concert. Those moments weren't about performance, they were about connection. Music became more than a hobby, it became a part of who he was. By the age of 7, he was already performing in local theater groups, losing himself in the joy of stage lights and story. As he got older, he sang in pubs and small venues near home, not chasing fame, just following something that felt like home. Still, he never made music his full-time job. Life took him elsewhere. He pursued a degree, became a teacher, and quietly put that dream in his back pocket, tucked between papers to grade and lessons to... But the voice, the one that would later stop a nation mid-breath, never left. It lingered in stolen moments, late-night rehearsals, whispered dreams. The audition? That wasn't a career move. It was a risk, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, the world was ready to hear what he'd been carrying. For Tom, stepping on that stage wasn't just about singing. It was about stepping into the version of himself he'd been waiting to share. All of what followed after Tom's unforgettable audition was nothing short of a whirlwind. With every round on Britain's Got Talent, he didn't just sing, he soared. In the semifinals, he stunned audiences with a bold and emotional performance of Rise Like a Phoenix, showing not only his vocal range, but a dramatic intensity held the room captive. By the time he reached the finals, Tom was no longer the underdog. He had become a fan favorite, quietly commanding the spotlight with humility and grace. His final song choice, I Who Have Nothing by Tom Jones, was both a vocal challenge and a message. It was raw, it was haunting, it was everything people had come to expect from him and more. But behind the scenes, everything was unraveling. Just hours before his most important performance, Tom collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, something he hadn't even known he had. Worse, he was suffering from diabetic ketoacidosis, a life-threatening condition. 2 days before the finale, he had started feeling drained, dizzy, and deeply unwell, but pushed through it in silence, not wanting to jeopardize his shot. It wasn't until his fiancée, Hannah, A nurse intervened and called emergency services that he got the help. No one knew if he would return to the stage, but he did, just 4 hours before the live show. Pale, exhausted, but unshaken, he performed with everything he had left. And though he didn't win the competition, placing third, the courage it took to stand up and sing after a near-fatal health scare made him a champion in the eyes of millions. His voice had moved, but now his story was beginning to do the same. Fans rallied around him. His performances went viral. His reach extended far beyond the stage. Tom Ball hadn't just competed on BGT, he had carved out a place in its history. The confetti had fallen, the cameras had stopped rolling, and the cheers began to fade. But for Tom Ball, the real journey was only just beginning. Fame arrived swiftly, almost overnight. Bookings poured in. He began performing across Europe and Asia, not as a hopeful contestant, but as a rising star in his own right. One of the most poetic full-circle moments came when he toured alongside Michael Ball, the very artist he had once been compared to in jest. It was validation, a dream realized, and proof that the kid from West Sussex had earned his place on the stage. But beneath the applause, quieter, more difficult reality was unfolding. The diagnosis he had received just before the BGT finale wasn't a one-time scare. It was a lifelong condition. Type 1 diabetes had entered his life without warning, and now it demanded his attention every single day. While others saw the spotlight, Tom was learning how to manage insulin, energies, and the constant mental toll of a chronic illness. Navigating sudden fame is hard. Doing it while adjusting to a life-altering diagnosis? Nearly impossible. And yet, Tom pressed forward. He didn't disappear into the glamour or retreat into privacy. He moved into the next chapter of his life with quiet courage. In October, he married Hannah, the woman who had stood by him through it all. Their wedding wasn't just a celebration of love, but a grounding moment in a life that was quickly becoming surreal. For Tom, the commitment wasn't only to music or marriage, it was to something bigger. He realized he had been given a platform and he wanted to use it, not just to sing, but to serve. His voice had once stunned an audience. Now, it was beginning to carry purpose. Tom Ball could have easily coasted on the fame he had earned. The viral clips, the sold-out shows, the comparisons to greats like Susan Boyle and Michael Ball. But that was never enough. He wasn't content with just being known for one great performance or one tear-jerking moment on TV. Tom wanted his journey to mean something, to reach further than the applause. So he began to reinvent what being a performer could look like. He stepped into a new role, not just as a singer, but as an advocate. Becoming an official ambassador for Diabetes UK, Tom started using his personal battle with type 1 diabetes as a message of hope. His story wasn't about weakness, it was about resilience, and he wanted others facing the same diagnosis to know they weren't alone. At the same time, he launched something deeply personal, an online music school. For Tom, this wasn't a side project, it was a calling. He built a space where aspiring singers, regardless of experience, could learn directly from him. Not just the technical stuff, but the heart of performance, the vulnerability, the storytelling, the belief in yourself when no one else sees it. His students didn't just gain a teacher, they gained someone who understood what it meant to have a dream tucked away in silence. Then came a moment that proved how much he had grown vocally. In a video cover of Silk Sonic's Put on a Smile, Tom hit notes no one had heard from him before. Smooth, soaring, and filled with quiet confidence. It wasn't just impressive, it was transformative. The boy who once sang La Mise in the backseat of his mom's car had become a full-fledged artist, one still rooted in humility, but now blooming with creative power. And just when it seemed like he had reached his stride, he took another leap that would bring him face-to-face with a whole new audience on the other side. In 2023, Tom Ball crossed the Atlantic and stepped onto an even bigger stage, America's Got Talent All-Star. It was a bold move. Competition featured only the best from the Got Talenters, and expectations were sky high. But from the moment he began his rendition of The Sound of Silence, it was clear Tom wasn't just there to compete, he was there to cap. The performance was haunting, powerful, and deeply emotional. When the final note faded, all three judges, Simon, Heidi, and Howie, stood in unison to hit the golden buzzer together. It was a rare moment of agreement, a universal yes to a voice that refused to be ignored. Simon, always one for a memorable quote, called him Susan Boyle's grandson, not just for his humble beginnings, but for the way he made the world stop, listen. Heading into the finals, all eyes were on Tom. Could he deliver again? He chose Radiohead's Creep, reimagined with his signature emotional intensity. And once again, he stunned the room. The performance was raw, delicate, aching. Yet when the votes came in, the outcome surprised many. Tom didn't make the top 5. It was a twist that disappointed fans, but not one that defined him. Because by this point, Tom Ball wasn't chasing trophy. He was building something much bigger. Today, he continues to sing on global stages, but more than that, continues to inspire. His journey from teacher to artist, from classroom to concert hall, hasn't just been about fame. It's been about finding meaning, lifting others, and staying grounded in the face of enormous change. He still teaches, He still learned, and he still sings like the world is listening, even when it isn't. As one fan perfectly put it, he left the classroom and taught the world something even greater. From classroom whispers to standing ovation, Tomball's journey reminds us that real talent doesn't need a crown to shine. His story isn't about chasing the spotlight. It's about answering a quiet call that had been there all along, a call to sing, to teach, to rise. Not just once, but again and again, even when life threw its hardest notes. He didn't win the competition, but he won something deeper, the hearts of millions, and the courage to live out his truth. Was fame a blessing, or just the beginning of his real story? Comment below and tell us, what was your favorite Tomball performance? And if you believe in second chances, quiet heroes, and big voices from small towns, like, subscribe, and join us for the next story, from Spotlight to Real.